Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we are taking a look at the 3 decks I used to get Infinite early this season, and all of them are actually featuring the new Season Pass Skaar. Now, Skaar is not a overly crazy card. I think he's actually a pretty good balance for a Season Pass card, where he feels very playable in a certain subset of decks, but he doesn't feel like he's pushing the power boundaries that we've seen in the last few months with things like Loki and Elsa and Miss Marvel, but he does feel more enjoyable to play, at least to me, than Shaw was. And while he has been fairly solid in these decks, I do think one bonus of these decks is that they can all function without Skaar. Skaar is a pretty decent addition, but unlike particularly something like Miss Marvel, where the deck just doesn't really work the same without her, I think if you don't have Skaar, you can still play a lot of these decks with reasonable replacements. So the first deck we have here is Ronin Skaar. I messed around with a bunch of different Ronin decks after we got the buff to him a little while ago, and this is one I ended up really liking that Skaar found a pretty solid home in. Now, most of the time, Skaar is going to be just a 4-drop and not something we're playing every game, but we do have 3 main activators for him here. We have Sentry, we have Ronin, and then the more fringe one of using Forge to buff up our Gladiator. What I like about this deck is it has very decent stats for the cost between things like Ronin, Sentry, Gladiator, Maximus, and Cosmo has actually been an all-star MVP in this deck, not only for helping to protect our big threats, but also making it easier to play things with negative effects like Sentry in the games you don't find Annihilus, Gladiator if we're worried about our opponent having big threats pop out of their deck, or Maximus if we want to avoid giving the opponent cards in the games where we're not planning on playing Ronin. Mobius is also a really nice tech right now against a lot of people running Skaar and She-Hulk and whatnot, and it helps the deck a lot against Loki, which has traditionally been one of the more rougher matchups. Iceman's a underrepresented 1-drop nowadays, but he feels really good in this style of deck. We're trying to mess with your opponent's curve so they can't play out all their cards, and it boosts up our Ronin's power. We have the Annihilus Sentry Hood package, and you may be thinking, well, isn't Annihilus going to get nerfed next patch? I've actually been keeping track of that during our games, and while I do think the nerf from 5.7 to 5.5 will be fairly significant for this card, most of the time when I'm playing Annihilus, it's after playing Sentry, and that 2 power hasn't really made the difference in the games I've played so far. And then Master Mold and Maximus. Max is just good power. We can play him behind Cosmo if needed to avoid the cards, and then use Maximus to get a solid body onto the board, while not necessarily giving them as many cards. It's also useful at the end of the game where if our opponent's dumping out their hand more, we can refill it up a bit so that way Ronin is guaranteed to be big. But yeah, I really like this deck a lot. Reminder that Master Mold will be dropping with the patch, so he'll be going down to Series 3. So if you're looking for something to try out that features Ronin and the Annihilus stuff, this has been one of my favorites of the bunch, and Skaar has been fairly nice in it just as a solid body for cost that takes advantage of the fact that we're playing some other big threats. The next deck we have here features our full family of Hulks, and that is High Evo, featuring Moon Girl and She-Hulk, Skaar, and Hulk. Also using the new card Kyera. I don't think you necessarily need Kyera to play this deck if you don't have her, but if you do have her, she is a really good addition, as just having that global board effect to protect our big threats and our small ones is probably the best served in High Evolutionary, considering how much we rely specifically on those costs of cards to win the game. We're running a Quinjet Moon Girl package in here to double up on our big threats like She-Hulk, Skaar, or even Hulk sometimes. I wasn't sure about Quinjet at first, but after some more testing with it, it proved to be really, really strong in the games where we're able to do Moon Girl stuff. Sometimes it enables us to just go Hulk on 5 into Hulk on 6 too, which is really nice. It's going to be pretty rare games where you're actually getting down all 3 of the Hulks at the same time. But what I like about Skaar here is he does provide some redundancy, and his reduced cost, once we're able to get down a Hulk or a She-Hulk, helps us float energy so we get the benefits of our cards that want that to happen. Other than that, we play like a pretty standard High Evo list, but Kyera has been really nice, not only protecting our stuff from Killmonger, but also making so we don't really have to fear Shang-Chi by slamming our early stuff down if possible to get those Skaar discounts. And it's also just really fun in those games where things line up, where you get a favorable location and you're able to slam down the whole trio of Hulks. And then the final deck I used to finish my push to Infinite today was Thanos Lockjaw. So Thanos Lockjaw has been an archetype I've always really enjoyed, and the addition of Skaar felt like a pretty solid thing to add to it. I will say Skaar definitely does not make or break this deck. You could very easily throw in another tech card, another big threat, and it probably wouldn't make the biggest difference in the world. But what I do like about Skaar is that oftentimes we are playing him for 4 or 2 mana, if we're not just cheating him out of Lockjaw, and that lines up pretty well with either being able to throw in a stone alongside Skaar into our Lockjaw on turn 5, or play him for 2 mana if we cheated out some other big threats on turn 6 alongside a Shang-Chi or some more stones. We are running the Killmonger Death package. You might be wondering why we're not running Kyera. I do think Kyera might have a home in Thanos Lockjaw, but I don't like her in this particular version of it where we're running both Killmonger and Death. Death is a card that doesn't get that protection if it gets cheated out early, so there's a little bit less value there, and Kyera obviously can have some anti-synergy with Killmonger. I've liked Killmonger because there's a lot of high Evo and Thanos around, and I find Killmonger does a lot of work in those matches. We're running the full suite of ways to ramp and cheat stuff out here with Psylocke, Wave, and Lockjaw, allowing us to get multiple big threats onto the battlefield, and that way we can get our Skaar reduced cost. Shang is our main form of interaction here alongside Killmonger, as this deck really still benefits from being able to take out big threats from the opponent. And then the big threats of our own, some of these have been standard for a while in Devil Dino, Vision, Thanos himself, and Magneto, and of course the all-star Blob, who is putting out the most power in the game for a 6-drop currently. I'm excited to see how Lockjaw Thanos evolves and which versions of it end up being best. But for me, so far, this one's felt really solid, and Skaar feels like he earned his place in it. Yeah, those are the 3 decks I used to hit early Infinite this season. I'll leave a link in the description to all the decks if you want to import them yourself, and if you have any questions about them, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.